Kosuke Nozaki, dubbed Japan's most notorious playboy billionaire, claimed to have been with over 4,000 women in his lifetime. Ironically, the very thing that fueled his rise to extreme wealth, his obsession with women and indulgent lifestyle, was also what ultimately led to his downfall. In February 2018, at the age of 77, he married a 22-year-old former adult film actress, but just 3 months later, he was found dead at home. Toxicology reports revealed traces of stimulants in his system, leading police to believe he had taken performance-enhancing drugs before getting intimate, which may have caused his heart to give out. But as investigators dug deeper, they realized this case wasn't as simple as it seemed. Was Nozaki's death truly an accident, or was there something much darker at play? And how exactly did his obsession with women turn him into a billionaire? Kosuke Nozaki was born on April 13, 1941, in Tanabe City, Wakayama, Japan. He was the third of 7 siblings, growing up in a household where 9 people had to share whatever little food they had. Life was already tough, but being born during World War II made things even worse. Japan was facing severe shortages, and for the Nozaki family, every meal was uncertain. They never knew if there would be a next one. After finishing middle school, Nozaki chose to skip further education and jump straight into making money. But his goal wasn't to escape poverty or build a better life. It was women. When he was just 14, he had an experience with an older woman arranged by his mother. After that experience, there was no turning back. He became completely obsessed, hooked on the thrill and pleasure of it all. His fascination with desire and relationships would stay with him for the rest of his life. Nozaki had done all kinds of jobs, like picking up scrap metal and working as a beer salesman. Every time he got paid, he'd head straight to the town to find women. Over time, his mindset twisted, and he began to think that as long as he had money, he could have an endless supply of women. That's when he developed this intense thirst for money. To make more cash, he worked like crazy. One day, after delivering beer, he spotted something strange in a filthy ditch, a white object. His curiosity got the best of him, so he picked it up. It turned out to be a used condom. He'd heard about them before, but had never used one, so driven by curiosity, he asked around to find out how much they cost. To his surprise, he learned he couldn't even afford one. Back then, the average salary for a recent college graduate in Japan was around 15,000 yen per month, and an average family's monthly living expenses were about 12,000 yen. But the price of a box of condoms was a shocking 1,200 yen. This was during the post-war recovery period, and many raw materials were still under strict control, which made rubber expensive. So naturally, condoms were insanely overpriced. Most people would think that something so small being so expensive means no one would buy it, but Nozaki's intense desire to make money led him to spot an opportunity in condoms. At that time, Japan was in the recovery phase, the economy was slowly bouncing back, and there was a growing middle class who could afford condoms. Plus, many young people had a need for contraception, but not many were willing to swallow their pride and actually buy them at the drugstore. Nozaki figured it out. There was a demand, but people were either too embarrassed to buy them at the store, or they didn't even know such a thing existed. So, Nozaki went straight to the drugstores and bought condoms in bulk, then started going door to door selling them. Of course, he targeted people with money, often choosing homes where the husband was out and doing live demonstrations for the housewives. Even though his prices were way higher than the drugstores, a lot of people still bought from him. At just over 20 years old, Nozaki Kosuke was making 3 times the monthly income of a typical office worker, thanks to his hustle and smarts. With all the money he made, Nozaki spent it on those women of the night. As he met more of them, he realized they were actually his best customers. They consumed a lot, and the number of sex workers had surged in post-war Japan, creating a huge market. Nozaki saw the opportunity and began scaling up, recruiting employees to help him sell. Essentially, he was building a sales network. His business kept growing, and his first big payday came from the very same desire that had initially driven him: finding more women. Back then, Japan was in a rebuilding phase, and a lot of people were eager to start their own businesses. The problem wasn't a lack of opportunities, it was the lack of startup capital. Nozaki saw this gap and launched a new plan: loan sharking. It's a high-profit business anywhere in the world, and Japan didn't have any cap on the interest rates for private lending at the time. In fact, the Japanese government turned a blind eye to it in an effort to boost the economy. Nozaki's lending business took off, and once again, he made a huge profit by riding the wave of the era. But what really turned him into a tycoon was his next big move. Around 1985, with his sharp business sense, Nozaki invested nearly all of his cash into real estate. By the year 2000, with the Japanese yen gaining value and the economy growing rapidly, he skyrocketed to the top, becoming a billionaire entrepreneur. After his success, Nozaki was different from other business moguls. He didn't attend events or make public appearances. Instead, he kept a low profile, often hopping between clubs in Tokyo and Osaka, moving from one woman to the next. His taste in women also changed. He wasn't interested in club girls anymore. Now, he went for younger, more attractive women with respectable jobs. Of course, he wasn't into wasting time on romance. His approach was blunt and to the point. For instance, if he saw a woman he liked on the street, he'd walk right up to her and say,
"How about spending the night with me for 400,000 yen? No? How about 500,000 yen?
As crude as it was, it actually worked, and Nozaki always had beautiful women around him. Nozaki had originally planned to live a quiet, low-key life, but 2016 changed everything. In February of that year, the police in Tanabe City received a call from a man reporting a burglary, with losses totaling over 60 million yen. The caller? None other than Nozaki himself. He claimed that a box of jewelry worth more than 50 million yen had been stolen, along with a bag containing 6 million yen in cash. Nozaki suspected a woman named Mari Miyahara, a foreign model he had been seeing. According to him, Miyahara had been introduced to him by a Tokyo club, and he had a thing for foreigners, even spending 1 million yen on her. The two had been dating for a while, and Miyahara regularly visited Nozaki's home in Tanabe. Each time, he would generously hand over 400,000 to 500,000 yen. As time went on, Nozaki grew more trusting and sometimes even left her alone at his house. Sadly, on one of these occasions, she took advantage of his trust and stole everything he had. Miyahara was eventually arrested, and with clear security footage showing her actions, there was no denying her crime. In interviews, Nozaki revealed that what upset him most wasn't the stolen money, but the fact that Miyahara had betrayed his trust. He even casually said,
60 million yen is just paper to me. If anything, this case was a valuable experience.
This statement sent shockwaves through the media, and suddenly Nozaki was all over the tabloids. Before this, his extravagant spending on women was mostly local gossip within the Wakayama area, and his low-key lifestyle meant few people knew about him. But after the media storm, that all changed. People couldn't get enough of the rich guy who treated money like trash and was willing to blow it all on beautiful women. The media frenzy turned Nozaki into a bit of a celebrity. Women began flocking to him, and he soon realized that being a little flashy wasn't such a bad thing. From then on, he fully embraced his newfound fame and started showing off his lavish lifestyle without hesitation. In December 2016, at the age of 75, Nozaki released his autobiography with a bold and eye-catching title, "The Reason I Became a Billionaire Was to Sleep with Women." With a title like that, it was bound to grab attention, and the book sold out almost immediately. In it, Nozaki revealed that he had no interest in luxury cars or mansions. His sole motivation for amassing wealth was to date beautiful women. The book was filled with vivid tales of his interactions with women, and he was unapologetic about it, claiming that everyone has their own dreams and has just happened to be pursuing attractive women. Even more outrageous, Nozaki claimed he had been with 4,000 women and spent around 3 billion yen on these relationships. Sources close to him disclosed that Nozaki would pay women anywhere from 300,000 to 400,000 yen per night, an amount far exceeding the monthly salary of many office workers in Japan. His justification for the extravagant spending?
This isn't paying for intimacy. It's just a gift to show my appreciation.
Following the book's release, Nozaki was inundated with love letters from women offering to become his girlfriend. This flood of attention continued until February 2018, when 77-year-old Nozaki shocked everyone by announcing his marriage. His new wife was 22-year-old Satomi Sudo, born in 1996 in Hokkaido. She claimed to be a model, and, in terms of looks and physique, certainly fit Nozaki's definition of a beautiful woman. Captivated by her, Nozaki wasted no time. After just 3 months of intense pursuit, they were married. The marriage made headlines and sent Nozaki straight to the cover of entertainment gossip magazines. However, a bombshell of news nearly caused the elderly Nozaki to faint. Someone told him,
Your pseudo isn't a model at all. She's actually a professional actress specializing in adult films. She's even had plastic surgery. She's a manufactured beauty.
When Nozaki found out, he was livid. While he didn't care much about money, the thought of his legitimate wife being an adult film star was a huge blow to his pride. It would ruin his reputation. Enraged, Nozaki decided he was going to divorce her. But before that could happen, things took a turn for the worse. On the night of May 24, 2018, around 10 p.m., the police in Tanabe received an emergency call about a death. The call came from Nozaki's wife, Saki Sudo, and their maid, Junyo Takeda. When the police arrived, they found Nozaki sitting on the second-floor sofa, already lifeless. There were no signs of struggle, injuries, or visible trauma at the scene. Initially, it seemed like Nozaki, at 77, had died from a heart attack, which would have been a natural cause of death. However, the coroner's report threw that theory out the window. They found 0.5 to 1 gram of amphetamines in Nozaki's stomach, enough to kill a healthy person, let alone an elderly one. The coroner concluded that Nozaki died from amphetamine poisoning, with the time of death estimated around 9 p.m. The investigation showed there were no needle marks on his body, suggesting the stimulant had been ingested orally. So, the big question was, did Nozaki take the stimulant himself, maybe to boost his performance, or was he poisoned by someone else? That detail would decide whether it was an accident or a murder. From a typical standpoint, murder seemed much more likely, especially with Nozaki's massive fortune, which would make him a tempting target. The police definitely looked into this. Nozaki had always been a health-conscious guy, mentioning in his book that he aimed to live to 120. He never used drugs, and his daily routine was all about staying fit. Even at 77, he was dedicated to work, waking up early for global financial news before heading to the office. His friends also confirmed he was super careful with his diet after 2 strokes, making it hard to believe he'd willingly take stimulants. The police started focusing on poisoning and found something interesting. 18 days before Nozaki's death, his beloved dog had also mysteriously died. Nozaki was extremely fond of the dog and had even said he'd leave it a big inheritance. Could someone have killed the dog first to stop it from inheriting the fortune? They dug up the dog's body but found nothing unusual. Next, the police checked the surveillance footage from Nozaki's house and saw that no outsiders had come over that night. From 5 p.m. onward, the only people in the house were his wife, Saki Sudo, and the maid, Sumio Takeda, making them both the prime suspects. According to the investigation, Takeda had known Nozaki for over 30 years. Back in the day, she was pretty stunning, and she and Nozaki had a past romantic relationship. Later on, Takeda borrowed some money from Nozaki to open a bar, but the business failed because of the bad market. Nozaki stepped in to help her out by hiring her as a maid. Since then, she had been taking care of Nozaki's daily needs, and he trusted her a lot, even mentioning at one point that he planned to leave her a part of his inheritance. Logically, Takeda didn't seem to have a motive for the crime, and when the police searched her place, they found no traces of any stimulants. Takeda explained that she made dinner as usual and went for her regular walk around 4 p.m. to give Nozaki and Sudo some private space. She came back around 7:30 p.m. and saw Sudo still watching TV in the living room, while Nozaki had already gone upstairs to rest. Around 9 p.m., Sudo went upstairs, and shortly after, she screamed. When Takeda rushed upstairs, she found Nozaki sitting on the sofa in his underwear, unresponsive. She immediately called the police. Takeda also mentioned that after Nozaki and Sudo got married, they didn't live together much, but for some reason, just before Nozaki's incident, Sudo had suddenly moved in. On the other hand, when the police questioned Sudo, she didn't hold back in showing how much she disliked Nozaki.
My monthly allowance of 1 million yen is more than enough for me. I didn't like him, but he was already 77 years old. Why wouldn't I just stick it out for a few more years, wait for him to kick the bucket, and inherit his money as his legal wife?
She answered the police's questions with clear impatience, but this logic made sense to the police. They figured there was no need for her to risk committing a crime. They also searched her place in Tokyo, but found no suspicious evidence. Ultimately, Since they couldn't rule out the possibility of Nozaki's suicide, the police had no choice but to release the two main suspects. But the investigation didn't end there. They dug deeper and found that Sudo had always been pretty vain, even back in her student days. She was constantly spending money on shopping to make herself look good. No one knew where she was getting the money from, but she would regularly post on social media, showing off her fancy clothes and bags. She was also spotted at host clubs a lot, and there were rumors that she moved to Tokyo from Hokkaido because she had fallen for a host. There was no emotional connection between her and Nozaki. She was in it just for the money. She even hid her marriage to him from her family, clearly just playing the short game to scam some cash. Funny enough, just 2 months before his death, Nozaki had a routine checkup and everything was fine. Yet only 3 months after they got married, both Nozaki and his dog passed away. What was even more suspicious was that after Nozaki's death, Sudo didn't seem sad at all, not even a little. Whether during interviews or handling the funeral, she was always smiling. According to Nozaki's friends, he had already decided to divorce her after finding out she had worked in adult films and even had divorce papers ready. Is it possible that Sudo realized she'd get nothing if he divorced her and didn't want to wait for him to die naturally, so she decided to take matters into her own hands? Given her motive, it's hard not to see her as a prime suspect. On April 28, 2021, the main suspect, Sudo, was officially arrested for premeditated murder and violating stimulant control laws after the police found key evidence on her phone. Turns out before Nozaki's death, Sudo had searched stuff like how to use stimulants and where to buy stimulants. She even reached out to a stimulant dealer and the two secretly met in Tabe City. The police believed that Sudo had successfully bought the stimulant and, motivated by the huge inheritance, used it to kill Nozaki. On top of that, employees from Nozaki's company came forward with more info, saying that just 2 months after Nozaki's death, Sudo became a board member through an emergency shareholder meeting. She also had the company's finance team transfer 38.3 million yen to her personal account and was planning to move to Dubai. But because of the pandemic, she couldn't get out of the country in time. Even though the prosecution charged Sudo with murder, they didn't have direct evidence, so the whole case was based on circumstantial stuff. During the trial, Sudo never admitted to anything and said that Nozaki Kosuke actually paid her 200,000 yen to help buy the stimulant. She searched for it online, bought it, and handed it over to him, but made sure to say that she wasn't the one who actively bought it.
No matter how much light gray there is, it doesn't turn into black.
This was what her defense lawyer said, and they kept insisting Sudo was innocent. On December 12, 2024, the Wakayama District Court ruled her not guilty, saying that while there was a possibility she killed Nozaki, they simply could not rule out reasonable doubt. Then, on December 24, 2024, the prosecution appealed the decision to the Osaka High Court. Looking back at Nozaki's life, he definitely caught the wave of Japan's economic boom. Even though he blew through 3 billion yen on women, when he passed away, he still had a whopping 1.3 billion yen in assets. No kids, parents were long gone, so his inheritance situation was pretty straightforward, just his siblings and his wife. According to Japanese law, if there's no will and no kids or parents, the spouse gets 3/4 of the estate, and the siblings split the remaining quarter. So Nozaki's death was a jackpot for Sudo. In the battle over the inheritance, Sudo and Nozaki's siblings were on opposite sides because if Sudo got convicted, she wouldn't be able to inherit and the siblings would get a bigger cut. But here's the kicker. No one saw it coming when Nozaki's assistant dropped a bombshell, a letter with Nozaki's will. And it turns out he wanted to donate all of his assets to his hometown, Tanabe, for development. Major plot twist, huh? The handwriting was verified to be Nozaki's, so if the will holds up, the siblings are basically out of luck, but Sudo, as his wife, could still claim up to 50% as long as she isn't convicted. Obviously, the siblings weren't happy and are trying to argue the will's invalid. As of now, the battle for Nozaki's estate is still up in the air. Looks like the dust won't settle until the whole case wraps up.